The Senate will come to order. I ask everyone present to please rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have with us today Rabbi Yisrael Kahan from Oyzrim Jewish Council. Rabbi?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Senator Carlucci, for the invitation. It's a great honor. In Judaism, we are taught to hold a high regard for law and order. As our sages tell us, pray for the well-being of government, for in its absence, man would swallow one another alive. These are troubling times that we live in today. Barely 75 years after the liberation of Auschwitz, and anti-Semitism is on the rise again. The eyes of New Yorkers are upon you to pass legislation for a better and brighter tomorrow. As the Talmud says, he who saves one life is as if he has saved the world entire. And the reasoning behind it being that all the good deeds that the person will do from today on will be attributed to the rescuer. So whether you are passing laws to improve education, additional resources for those struggling with mental illness, providing security for houses of worship and schools, or as later today you'll be passing Stephen's Law in memory of Stephen Cancerero, which will improve communication for families of those struggling with substance abuse addiction. You are the saviors of New York. You are our heroes. And so I will recite a prayer that we do every Saturday in the synagogue. He who has blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless the members of this chamber along with all bodies of government, and may all those who engage with the needs of the public faithfully, may he reward them with abundantly. May he cast away from them all illness. May he rejuvenate their bodies, and may he bestow grace and prosperity in all their endeavors. And let us all say, Amen.
Reading of the journal.
In Senate, Monday, February 3rd, 2020, the Senate met pursuant to adjournment. The Journal of Sunday, February 2nd, 2020 was read and approved. On motion, Senate adjourned.
Without objection, the journal stands approved as read. Presentation of petitions, messages from the Assembly, messages from the Governor, reports of standing committees, reports of select committees, communications and reports from state officers, motions and resolutions. Senator Janaris.
Mr. President, can we begin by taking up Resolution 2690 by Leader Stewart Cousins, read it in its entirety, and recognize Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins on the resolution.
The Secretary will read.
Senate Resolution 2690 by Senator Stewart Cousins, memorializing Governor Andrew M. Cuomo to proclaim February 2020 as Black History Month in the state of New York. Whereas Black History Month, previously known as Negro History Week, was founded by Dr. Carter G. Woodson and was first celebrated on February 1st, 1926. Since 1976, it has become a nationally recognized month-long celebration held each year during the month of February to acknowledge and pay tribute to African Americans neglected by both society and the history books. And whereas the month of February observes the rich and diverse heritage of our great state and nation, and whereas Black History Month seeks to emphasize Black history is American history, and whereas Black History Month is a time to reflect on the struggles and victories of African Americans throughout our country's history and to recognize their numerous valuable contributions to the protection of our democratic society in war and in peace. And whereas some African American pioneers, whose many accomplishments, all which took place during the month of February, went unnoticed, as well as numerous symbolic events in February that deserve to be memorialized, include John S. Rock, a noted Boston lawyer who became the first African American admitted to argue before the U.S. Supreme Court on February 1st, 1865, and the first African American to be received on the floor of the United States House of Representatives. Jonathan Jasper Wright, the first African American to hold a major judicial position, who was elected to the South Carolina Supreme Court on February 1st, 1870. President Abraham Lincoln submits the proposed 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, abolishing slavery to the states for ratification on February 1st, 1865. Civil rights protester Jimmy Lee Jackson died from wounds inflicted during a protest on February 26, 1965, leading to the historic Selma, Alabama civil rights demonstrations, including Bloody Sunday, in which 600 demonstrators, including Martin Luther King Jr., were attacked by police. Authoring J. Lucy became the first African-American student to attend the University of Alabama on February 3, 1956. She was expelled 3 days later for her own safety in response to threats from a mob. In 1992, authoring Lucy Foster graduated from the university with a master's degree in education. The same day, her daughter, Grazia Foster, graduated with a bachelor's degree in corporate finance. The Negro Baseball League was founded on February 3, 1920. Jack Johnson, the first African-American world heavyweight boxing champion, won his first title on February 3, 1903. And Reginald F. Lewis was born on December 7, 1942, in Baltimore, Maryland, received his law degree from Harvard Law School in 1968, and was a partner in Murphy, Thorpe & Lewis, the first black law firm on Wall Street. And in 1989, he became the president and CEO of TLC Beecher's International Foods Company, the largest black-owned business in the United States. And whereas, in recognition of the vast contributions of African Americans, a joyful month-long celebration is held across New York State and across the United States with many commemorative events to honor and display the cultural heritage of African Americans. And whereas this legislative body commends the African American community for preserving for future generations its centuries-old traditions that benefit us all and add to the color and beauty of the tapestry which is our American society. And now, therefore, be it resolved that this legislative body pause its deliberations to memorialize Governor Andrew M. Cuomo to proclaim February 2020 as Black History Month in the state of New York, and be it further resolved that copies of this resolution, suitably engrossed, be transmitted to the Honorable Andrew M. Cuomo, Governor of the state of New York, and to the events commemorating Black History Month throughout New York State.
Majority Leader Stuart Cousins on the resolution.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. And I want to thank Rabbi Israel Kahan for your prayer today. It's good to see you from my neighbor, because we're Westchester County, and I know you're Rockland. And Mr. President, every year I'm proud at this time to honor African American culture and history during this special month, not only because I'm African American, but because it shines a light on American history. And again, I recognize the rabbi because my remarks have so much to do with what's gone on over the past couple of months. You know, over these past few months, our state and country reeled following the horrific acts of anti-Semitism, and some, unfortunately, by African Americans. And I was repeatedly asked at menorah lightings, why was there not more attention paid to the shared experiences of the Black and Jewish communities in the struggle for justice? You know, I knew that Dr. King's 1965 March on Selma was significant for so many reasons, but also because he linked arm in arm with Rabbi Heschel, forcing the nation to acknowledge the exclusion of Black Americans from the equality promised in our Constitution. I was acutely aware of the critical involvement of the Jewish community in the founding of the NAACP, which happened right here in New York. And I also knew of Dr. King's unequivocal and outspoken support of Jewish people as he rebuked Hitler. Dr. King famously said, and I quote, "We should never forget that everything Adolf Hitler did in Germany was legal, and everything the Hungarian freedom fighters did in Hungary was illegal. It was illegal to aid and comfort a Jew in Hitler's Germany. Even so, I'm sure that had I lived in Germany at the time, I would have aided and comforted my Jewish brothers," end quote. Sadly, it was shared oppression, dehumanization, and marginalization that brought together Blacks and Jews in a struggle to make America and the world recall and condemn injustice and inequality. So with that thought, I asked my friend and Jewish Senator Shelley Mayer, whose district is intertwined with mine, to work with me on an educational project. She agreed, and because it is an educational endeavor, we engaged one of the schools where we shared mutual constituents. The meeting at the school took place, and I was amazed that there was a discussion about whether or not we should actually celebrate Black History Month at all. You have some kids who argue that it's insulting, that the accomplishments of Blacks are relegated to 1 month, and the information was very often redundant, same names, same stories. In the end, we assured them that although this was being initiated during Black History Month, it was an important enough project, an important enough subject matter to be shared long after the month, because the achievements of Black America and the partnerships, because of our belief in the democracy and the ideals of this country, are very, very important. So I'm personally grateful to Dr. Carter G. Woodson for his insistence on setting aside the month of February. As was said in the resolution, it was initially a week, but it was February because it celebrated the birth of Abraham Lincoln and the birth of Frederick Douglass. That's why February was named. And it was important to really acknowledge the accomplishments of a community who, in our founding documents, were classified as 3/5 of a person. That thinking allowed for the systemic exclusion and appropriation of Black contributions in America. And we are still battling that thinking in 2020. As a nation, we should be told, reminded that Blacks invented many of the things we use every day, that Garrett Morgan invented the technology for the traffic light, and Frederick Jones invented refrigerated trucks, and Sarah Boone invented the ironing board. Dr. Patricia Bath, more recently, groundbreaking cataract treatment through laser surgery. We should hear the names of Sojourner and Harry and Ida and Shirley and Constance Baker Motley, who was the first African-American senator who served in this chamber. We should hear about Martin and Malcolm and Frederick Douglass, who the president seemed to have thought was still alive last year. Today, in a world teeming with information and misinformation, it's sometimes hard for our new generation to imagine a time in America when Black people were forbidden to read, or just a little more than 50 years ago, attend school with whites in the South. It's hard to imagine a time when Black families were separated and sold off to work for other people's profits. Black History Month forces us to be reminded of these not too distant historic realities. Black history also gives context to what we see today, when we see children separated from their families, when we see intergenerational poverty and over-incarceration of Black and brown bodies. It is contextual. Black History Month serves as a reminder that our stories are not always rooted in pain, but the story of African Americans in America is also one of perseverance, ingenuity, strength, courage, and resilience. We celebrate Black history because Black activism has helped pave the way for other minorities to have equal opportunities here in America. Black history is American history. Its lessons its partnerships should be learned and repeated and understood daily. When thinking about why it's important to celebrate Black History Month, I'm reminded of a quote by Alexis de Tocqueville. Quote, "The greatness of America lies not in being more enlightened than any other nation, but rather in her ability to repair her faults." African American community has helped repair those faults. As we recognize Black History Month, I hope that we keep celebrating, keep leading, keep learning, keep advancing our march towards justice for all as we echo the resolve of our Jewish brothers and sisters, never again. Thank you.
Senator Bailey on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. That will be an incredibly difficult act to follow. Madam Leader, you set the tone for us in many ways in our conference, and I thank you so much for being you and also just being part of Black history. You see, Black History Month isn't just about MLK, it's about ASC. In the other chamber, it's about CEH. It's about Velma at Montgomery. It's about that 3/5 compromise that we spoke about. Now, 3/5 of the African American, 3/5 of the statewide leaders are African American. That's the way we turn the 3/5 compromise on its head here in the state of New York. It's about lifting every voice and singing. Only the first verse, though. Because you know what happens after the first verse, we lift every voice and sing. There's a lot of humming. It's knowing about those legendary names and their accomplishments, but it's also knowing about somebody named Sylvia Richardson Holder. Now, you might be wondering who's Sylvia Richardson Holder, and please don't Google her just yet. June 22nd, 2015, from the Raleigh News and Observer. Telling a story in pictures in Johnson County Revisited, the newest addition to Arcadia Publishing's Images of America series, H. Smith Richardson of Vick Chemical Company reconnects in the 1940s with his family's aged former slave, Sylvia Richardson Holder, who is said to have had a hand in concocting the vapor rub that became an American household name following World War I. Now, even while in slavery, people who were thought to be inferior, they came up with products that we use to this day, and I want to illustrate that we're not that far removed from slavery. Now, why is Sylvia Richardson Holder important to me? Well, Sylvia Richardson Holder was the mother of Cora Holder Bailey, the mother of U.T. Bailey, who was the father of J.T. Bailey, who was the father of Stanley Bailey, who is my father. My great-great-grandmother was a slave, 117 years old, born in 1835, passing away in 1952, a year before my father was born. We're not that far removed from slavery. So for those who like to say, get over it, we're not that far removed from slavery. Not that many generations away. Great-great-great-grandmother. Now, I illustrate that brief family history not just to say that the Vicks company probably owes us a little bit of money because my great-great-great-grandmother came up with Vapor Rub. We're going to look into that, Mr. President. But plain and simple, Black history is American history. There is no substitution. There is no difference. Black history and American history. Period. Point blank. People must learn about Black history because you have to understand that the fallacy of this post-racial America we still suffer from the vestiges of slavery every day. Mass incarceration, food insecurity, lack of health care, subpar education, and these all stem from slavery. You see, if anybody's interested, we can speak later, and I have her birth certificate here. Very interesting to see how we were considered in that day and time. Colored, Negroid, bills of sale of humans. 100 or so years ago. We are not that far removed. So, on a lighter note, I asked my father and many people in my family group chat, and those of us who have family group chats, we know how they can get. So I asked, what does black history mean to you? My father, it's the recognition that black people, their history, their culture, and their blood, sweat, and tears is inextricably woven into the fabric of America's past, present, and future. My Aunt Barbara, after teaching for over 30 years, I've concluded that since the majority of my students were black, and that most were the grandparents who had a Southern background, I thought that I should have been preaching to the choir. Black History Month should be a Black Studies course that is taught starting in middle school and part of the curriculum at all grade levels, so that people of all backgrounds will learn of the contributions that we made to building this country. Black history to me is my ancestors like Sylvia Richardson Holder, born a slave but persevered to be over 100 years old. Black history is now and will be ingrained in this country whether people accept us or not. You see, even if you don't directly see the struggle, we all have a front row seat. 21 years ago on this day, Amadou Diallo was taken away from us because he was black and had a wallet. Today is Rosa Parks' birthday, another leader in the civil rights movement that we speak about. And we're grateful for her small action that became so big in our society. And speaking of front row seats, on the heels of the Super Bowl, and we wonder why 12 black quarterbacks started games in the NFL this year, a unanimous MVP of the regular season, the Super Bowl MVP, and an offensive coordinator who helped win the Super Bowl, but not one person of color got a head coaching job this offseason. There's a problem. So we're charged with speaking up. Because as Brother Malcolm put it, education is our passport to the future. For tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today. Now, education isn't just traditional education. It's about knowledge. Knowledge of the role that black folks play in our society. As I often do, I learn every day. Mr. President, I learn through the lens of my daughters. So here's today's Giada and Karina moment. So I'm in the car the other day, and I'm saying, hey, Giada, Black History Month is coming up at school. You're going to start learning things. And she's like, well, what's that? She's like, well, I think I heard something about it on YouTube or Nick Jr. or Disney Jr. on one of these channels. I'm like, all right, well, one, you have too much screen time. We got to cut that down. And the second thing is like, okay, let me explain to you what it is. So Black History Month is where we celebrate the accomplishments of great African Americans who have affected history. And without skipping a beat, she says, Dad, like me? Absolutely like you. So Karina's there. Karina's not going to be outdone. Me too, Dad. I'm great. So either it's me and my wife or Nick Jr., but we're doing something okay. Our kids are that passport to the future that we spoke about, that Malcolm X spoke about. And then she said, well, are there other great African Americans? So we go down a list of people, and she's like, well, what about Pa? That's my dad. Yeah, what about Grandma? Sure. So for the next 15 minutes, she starts naming everybody that she knows that's a great African American person. Because in her mind, we're all great. And that's the message that we should be learning about in Black History Month. We all have greatness within us. Some people's greatness is in certain areas, while others are great in others. But there is greatness in all of us. It is incumbent upon us to have Black History Month so that people understand not only the struggle, but the triumph thereafter. We still have lots of firsts coming up. We've done so much, but there's still some more to do. I'm grateful for this opportunity to sit in this body. I'm grateful for Black History Month. And even though I can't sing, we lift every voice and sing. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Sanders on the resolution.
I ask you, Mr. President, to never have me going back of my colleague, but I'm back. I must go. I want to thank our leader for understanding the necessity of this, and I applaud her for this resolution. Mr. President, I have faith in America. I have a great faith that one day we're going to get it right, and we're going to be at such a place where these curriculums of everybody is finally going to be put into one complete book on American history. I have faith that that day will come. That day, sadly, is not today, but I have faith that that day will come. I still think that we're not so far from Arturo Schomburg. You may know the name as the creator of the Schomburg Library, arguably the greatest library on black history in the world, who got into it because his teacher told him that you blacks have no history, none at all. And he set out to collect and disprove that notion. So we're not that far from it, where Carter G. Woodson was able to create such a day. But as my colleague before me said, black history is American history, and American history is black history. You cannot fully understand American history. It's like trying to understand American history without looking at George Wallace, him too. Yes, him too. George Washington, Alexander Hamilton. Imagine trying to understand American history and taking out all of these people. You cheat yourself. You'll never get the idea right. In fact, I'll show it to you real quickly. Everyone, as my colleague said, this is the birthday of Rosa Parks. Everyone has seen that famous picture of Rosa Parks sitting in the bus, not moving, and standing up by sitting down. But if you look at that picture carefully, you'll see a white gentleman sitting right behind her. Careful now. That white guy was from New York, for one. He just happened to be on the bus. And he stayed on the bus to make sure that she wasn't beaten to a pulp. He's actually a Jewish gentleman also. He stayed on the bus to just make sure. You see, by focusing on one, you have to look at the whole. This is true American history, the history of all of us. If you read, if we just are taught right, which we're not. I contend that by just looking at it, if you scratch a Nazi, you're going to find a racist. If you scratch a racist, you're going to find a Nazi. Those type of thinking go together. We beat the Nazis once, we'll beat them again if need be. I'm talking America, and the world for that matter, but I'm talking America. You see, we have to learn so that we don't repeat these errors over and over. Had the world population stopped the fascists when they were invading Ethiopia and now Namibia, we might not have had the Holocaust. We are all in this together. We don't have a choice here. We have to share this planet. Therefore, we need to understand that. I know that one day we're going to have the ability to get real American history so that we can have a real American future. That day seems troubled today, Mr. President, as I conclude. That day seems troubled today while we have so many people dividing us and finding ways of saying who is an American, who is not, and that becomes so ever more picayune. I will say this. I have faith in the youth of America. I have faith that by understanding history, and I encourage all of us to study everyone's history. Start with black history, but everyone's history and their contribution to America. And by then, we can really claim the great distinction of being part of the American family. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Senator Comrie on the resolution.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to thank our leader, Majority Leader of the Senate, Senator Andrew Stewart Cousins, a historic figure in her own right as the first woman of this House, for for bringing forth this annual resolution. I also rise to declare that Black History Month is February, but Black history is made every day, 365, 24/7. Our history is being made each and every day here in New York State and around the world. But the month of February being designated as Black History Month provides us an opportunity to reflect on our history, particularly on the struggles that we have all endured, and highlight how we as Black Americans as a collective, as we as immigrants as a collective, remain resolute in our fight for freedom, justice, and basic fairness throughout centuries. Often we highlight notable individuals who have risen to great heights in academia, government, business, athletics, entertainment, and other fields. My district, Southeast Queens in particular, has been home to some of the most iconic names in Black history: W.E.B. Du Bois, Ella Fitzgerald, Count Basie, John Coltrane, Eddie Lockjaw Davis, Jackie Davison, Jackie Robinson, Lena Horne, LL Cool J, Run DMC, to name a few. I could keep going, because we have a lot of product in Southeast Queens, and product that's happening every day. In fact, I met two young people today that get up at 4:30 in the morning just to get from one part of Queens to another part, because they want to be the next Black heroes of our time. Often, we have a lot of local heroes in Queens, civil rights leaders like Stokely Carmichael, Roy Wilkins, who was a Queens resident, tennis player and coach William Bill Briggs, Human Rights Commissioner for New York City Kenneth Drew, the Dean of Southeast Queens, Archie Spigner, one of the first Black entrepreneurs citywide, Larry Cormier, who we lost this year. We had our own Erin Brockovich, who we lost this year. Linda Hazel, who pointed out that the Jamaica water supply was contaminated before anybody knew it, and saved thousands of people's lives, because now Southeast Queens is being taken care of by city water instead of Jamaica water. My personal angel, Dorothy Harvey, who made sure that I got elected when I first ran for office, was just indicative of the thousands of people in my district that have transformed lives and lifted entire communities through their commitment to the success of younger generations behind them. We take pride in the accomplishments of our ancestors, as well as our brothers and sisters today, because we know that in our society, Black women and Black men invariably must work harder in order to achieve equal recognition. We similarly take pride in our own accomplishments and those of our forebearers and our grandparents and those before us, because they too struggled to build our communities, provide for us, and leave us with more opportunity than they were ever given. I'm proud to represent one of the strongest African American and Caribbean communities in the entire country. I often say that I represent the best district in New York State. Yourself. Alongside other elected and community leaders who, despite the diversity of our backgrounds and upbringing, share a common history. My success and good fortune is only made possible by the community that I am so blessed to have been raised in and now represent here in Albany. Highlighting the exemplary contributions of African Americans shouldn't be limited to one month. However, I think the best way to honor the history of African American accomplishment is to continue to foster a climate in New York State that facilitates more Black achievement in the future. Passing stronger MWBE policy, mandating diversity in our schools and in the professional world, combating the systemic economic inequality that continues to hamper the financial well-being of Black families are ways that we can do this every day of the year. I also want to take time to thank the governor for allowing the commission to research the 400 years of history in New York State to come forward. I'm glad of the fact that he wanted to own the commission and take responsibility for making sure that we move around the state and find out our history, that we can talk to every part of New York State and find out of those people that were part of making sure that New York had a Black history. New York, as you know, was part of the movement to move people from the South to the North. We have burial grounds. We have people that were part of this history that we need to highlight and illuminate, hopefully, eventually in our school curriculum in New York State. So I want to take time to thank the governor for allowing that to happen. I hope this month that we will all take time to reflect on the distinct, important, and sobering history of people throughout our state and our country and celebrate the unbounded contributions of Black people past and present. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Parker on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, we've actually reached that part of the program where essentially everything has been said, but not everybody said it. But let me just associate myself with all of the comments that were made today. I think that they're really important. I'm going to keep my comments relatively short, particularly given me and my penchant for hyperbole. That being said, this is a really important month for not just African Americans, but for America. And really not even just for America anymore, but really for the world. A time in which we remember the achievements of people of African descent. One of the first things to remember about Black History Month or African American History Month, that is not just about the accomplishments of people of African descent once they've reached the New World. That the history of people of African American descent doesn't begin in 1619 in Jamestown, Virginia, but begins on the continent of Africa. That it's important when you start to study the history of African American people that you remember that people of African descent were the first people on this earth. Not saying they're better, just first. So when you look at Australopithecus, the very first humanoid that they ever found on the continent of Africa. But what's important is not that the first person is found there, but the last person is also found there. So when you see Homo sapiens sapien, they're also first found on the continent of Africa. That Africa becomes important because it is the cradle of civilization. That it becomes the beginning of everything we understand about politics, economics, science, mathematics, astrology, astronomy, architecture. All begin on the continent of Africa. And so that when you see people talking about, people were slaves, and I'm going to disagree with my colleague, Senator Bailey, for a minute, because his great-great-great-grandmother, wasn't a slave. She was an African person who happened to be in bondage. Slavery is a mentality. And I would put forward to this body that African people never were slaves. Yes, forced into bondage, forced into servitude, but always kept the spirit to fight. And so we call on the spirit now of Nat Turner and Denmark Vesey and Gabriel Prosser, and all those unknown and unheard people who fought their captors tooth and nail from the very moment. And that you saw within the context of the slave trade, right? A beginning of what's called the Ma'afa, or if you want to, in American terms, the African Holocaust, where roughly 200 million people were killed during the transporting of people into bondage. 200 million, and that's a conservative estimate. That we understand the notion of Holocaust, as we start connecting with our Jewish brothers and sisters, the notion of Holocaust, not just at what happened in Germany and Poland and parts of Europe, but understand it as a moral description, not a specific event. Because there have been many people who have gone through Holocaust. And we have to understand that in those contexts, that what happened to Jews in that period and what happened to African people in that period has also happened to Native Americans and can also happen to other people. That if we forget this month to remember the lessons of history, we're doomed to repeat them. One of the things that are important about this month is we reach into our cultural ethos and we bring forward a symbol out of Ghana of a bird looking backwards. That symbol is called Sankofa. And Sankofa is the notion, it literally means, Sankofa in Twi, among the Akan people in Ghana, literally means to go fetch, right? But the notion, as my father would say all the time, he says, how do you know where you're going if you don't know where you've been? Right? How do you know where you're going if you don't know where you've been? And if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. That during African American History Month, we're called on as a people to remember this history and remember as we study it. And I'm not just talking about people of African descent. I mean, all of us in this chamber, as we study the history of people of African descent, we are studying all of our history because there is no place in this world that African people haven't impacted the development of the culture. Some of you should check out a brother named Ivan Van Sertima, who wrote several books, African Presence in Early Asia, African Presence in Early Europe, African Presence in Early South America, right? Sorry, African Presence in, in the Americas, right? They came before Columbus. We can go on and on, right? But there's no place in which there hasn't been an impact. Not to mention the things that we've talked about in this chamber all the time. There's only been two major musical forms developed, you know, in the beginning of this world, in the beginning of the development of this country, right? Jazz and then hip hop, both out of the African ethos. And so we remember Carter G. Woodson, who in 1926 took his organization, the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, and took the work that he had spent his life working on, the Journal of Negro History, and began it as a week, just as a beginning, just to say, look, we got to start talking about this. Because even at that point, people were talking about African people like they were tabula rasa, that is blank slates, right? We forget that the greatest evil that was done by people to African people here in this world was to tell them that they had no history, that they had no culture, that they come from nothing, that they were less than human, right? We look at works of anthropology. Like, you know, many people who have studied anthropology don't know literally that the field of anthropology was actually created as a scientific justification of the enslavement of African people. They actually began with skull capacity tests in which they put seeds in different skulls, took a black skull, took a white skull, put smaller seeds in the white skull, and then counted the seeds and said there were more seeds in the white skull, and thus there was a greater cranial capacity and thus more intelligence, and then use the inverse to say that African people were less than human. We got to remember that history because that becomes the basis, right? That fake history and that fake science becomes the basis of how we create public policy. And so we study this month to remember who we are, not just where we came from, but to understand where we're going. That understand that history is just the documentation of culture, of the development of culture, and that culture is nothing but the living manifestation of our history. And I think that we will find, as many of us find as we talk to each other in this room, that as we understand this history, that there's actually far more that binds us than divides us. And so I challenge us all to spend some time this year studying this particular culture and this particular history, because I think that this becomes the basis for us to understand a lot of things about ourselves, no matter where we are. Because there's no place in which we don't find that people of African descent have impacted those places or the development of American life and culture. And so my particular thanks to the leader today for bringing this resolution forward, and certainly her comments were expansive and exhaustive. And I'm looking forward to the continued work that we do in this chamber to continue to honor the history of people of African descent and to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to live their life and to continue a history that rejects the oppression that we have seen amongst people across the state. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Jackson on the resolution.
Well, I'm told I must filibuster until tomorrow morning, so get ready. Joking. But seriously, with regards to the resolution and celebration of Black History Month, I want to give you a little story about myself and my family, and it's not going to take long, seriously. I'm still trying to find the history of my family. So I go on all of the census documents and what have you. My oldest daughter's helping me. And so we've traced our family back about 5 generations into Athens, Georgia. And if you know anything about Athens, Georgia, going way back, that's the University of Georgia right now. But going way back, you had a family, especially brothers, and their last name was Willingham. And that was my family's last name, Willingham. And Willingham's married to Jackson, and so that's why my name is Jackson. So my grandmother died at age 22 years of age, giving childbirth in Athens, Georgia. And so my mother, who was 6 years old at the time, and her younger sister, an aunt from Chicago, came back and took them to Chicago, and then an aunt from New York went to Chicago and brought my mother to New York, and that's how we wound up there. But also, going back as far as looking at the census data to 1940, 30, 10, 1900, 1860, they only listed the owners and just put the slave was either a female or male, an approximate age, so you didn't know who it was. And so even when doing some research trying to find out where my mother was when I took my daughter to apply for Spelman University down in Georgia, I went to the city of Atlanta, Georgia, and asked them to look up information about my mother's birth. They said, okay, we have to go to the colored section, because that's what it was referred to at that time, the colored section. You know, we were not black. They referred to them as colored, in other words, that are not very positive. So they didn't find anything. But also in looking at where my grandmother is buried, she's buried at a colored cemetery in Athens, Georgia. And so the university students and the trustees, the 3rd or 4th trustees that were involved with it, they said, we know where your grandmother area that she was buried at, but we don't know her specific grave. And why? Because at that time, when you're poor, you know, poor means, right? When you're poor and you're black, basically, if you weren't rich, then you were poor. And then from a southern point of view, they don't say poor, you say po. They said at that time they would put a stick in the ground with the name on it, so the stick is not there anymore. But they know the geographic area. And then looking at my family, my great aunt, my mother's aunt in Chicago, my great-grandmother is buried in Chicago because my great aunt was, I guess, the oldest of the family, and they brought their mother to Chicago. And my great-uncle, who was a veteran in World War II, is buried there also. So I'm learning a little bit about my history, you know, in that respect. But I say to all of you that my nephew, my brother, Donald Jackson, his son is named Donald Jackson also. So he has a couple of kids and what have you, and he texted me one time, and let me just read you the text. He said, Uncle Rob, your grandniece had to write about a famous black person, so I told her she had a famous uncle. And so this is a picture of her holding up a picture of me, and I'll read what she wrote. My uncle is a New York State senator, and he helps people in his community. That's what my great niece wrote about me. So I say all that to say is that loud and clear, as James Brown have said, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. So all of you should be proud of who you are and your family's history. And so all of us in reality, are brothers and sisters of the human race, and that's what it is. Assalamu alaikum means peace be upon all of you. Thank you.
Senator Myrie on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will be brief for as long as it takes. No, in all seriousness, my colleagues have said this much more eloquently than I can. As we take this time to recognize the greatness of being black and being black in this country, I would remind everyone here in the chamber that we are still, as a people, under siege. For every white woman that dies of a pregnancy-related condition, 12 black women die. The #1 cause of death in young black men is homicide. We have a foreclosure crisis that hit the country pretty hard in 2008 that is still ravaging black communities today all over this state. And in New York City, we still have the most segregated school system in this entire country. So I would urge all of us, as we celebrate the greatness of being black, that we recognize the current pain and the current tragedy that it is to be black in this country, and that we use that to bring our people up collectively and do it together. So I want to thank the leader for bringing this resolution, and I want to thank my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. President.
The question is on the resolution. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The resolution is adopted. Senator Janaris.
Mr. President, can we now take up Resolution 2661 by Senator Metzger, read that resolution in its entirety, and recognize Senator Metzger?
The Secretary will read.
Senate Resolution 2661 by Senator Metzger, memorializing Governor Andrew M. Cuomo to proclaim February 22nd through 29th, 2020 as FFA Week in the state of New York. Whereas it is the sense of this legislative body to support and promote the historic and significant observance of Future Farmers of America Week in the state of New York, and whereas attendant to such concern and in full accord with its long-standing traditions, this legislative body is justly proud to memorialize Governor Andrew M. Cuomo to proclaim February 22nd through 29th, 2020 as FFA Week in the state of New York, in conjunction with the observance of National FFA Week. And whereas the FFA motto, learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, living to serve, gives direction and purpose to those students who take an active role in succeeding in agricultural education and leadership. And whereas growing from a handful of students from agricultural classes who came together to form Future Farmers Clubs throughout the country in the 1920s to an FFA membership of 100,000 by 1935, today the National FFA organization has more than 610,000 members in more than 7,600 chapters and encompasses all 50 states as well as Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. And whereas FFA develops members' potential and helps them to discover their talent through hands-on experiences, giving the tools to achieve real-world success, these members are future chemists, veterinarians, government officials, entrepreneurs, bankers, international business leaders, teachers, and premier professionals in many career fields. And whereas, in the past year alone, New York FFA has experienced a 60% increase. They have been recognized as having the highest percentage of membership increase nationally in 2019, with 12 new chapters in that same year. That brings the total of new chapters in the last few years to 41 across New York. And whereas the United States Department of Education provides leadership and helps set direction for the FFA as a service to state and local agricultural educational programs. And whereas in accomplishing its mission, FFA has made a positive difference in the lives of students by developing their potential for premier leadership, personal growth, and career success through agricultural education, promoting citizenship, volunteerism, patriotism, and cooperation. And whereas agricultural education and FFA ensure a steady supply of young professionals to meet the growing needs in the science, business, and technology of agriculture. And whereas agricultural education in New York affects and instructs students in all parts of the state, and through their efforts, the officers and members of the New York FFA are achieving increased levels of national recognition for themselves and their schools and communities, as well as New York agriculture. And whereas it is the custom of this legislative body to recognize and applaud the leaders of commerce and industry whose accomplishments contribute to the economic health and prosperity of the communities of the state of New York and to the quality of life of its people. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this legislative body pauses its deliberations to memorialize Governor Andrew M. Cuomo to proclaim February 22nd through 29th, 2020 as FFA Week in the state of New York, and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution, suitably engrossed, be transmitted to the Honorable Andrew M. Cuomo, Governor of the State of New York.
Senator Metzger on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. With great pleasure, I rise today to sponsor this resolution proclaiming February 22nd to 29th to be Future Farmers of America Week in the state of New York. We have a lot to be proud of here in New York. As you heard in the resolution, we are leading the nation in membership gains in FFA. Membership climbed in just 3 years from 4,300 to 7,000, which is a huge achievement. I was very proud that my children's school district, the Rondout Valley School District, was one of 12 new FFA chapters in New York. Young women are increasingly in leadership roles in FFA across the state and represent 45% of New York FFA members. We have the statewide leadership here, and it looks like they represent about 50%. I think we have more work to do in this chamber. You're a model for us. I want to mention I'm very proud. This past year, one of the FFA chapters in my district, the Delaware Academy, received the New York State Chapter of the Year Award from the New York State Agricultural Society and Grange for their diverse programming, from their maple sugaring and sap house enterprise, their advocacy for the dairy industry, to their school garden that contributes fresh vegetables to the school lunchroom, and their community service, raising nearly $1,500 for the local food bank to help address food insecurity. FFA chapters across our state are giving back to their communities. They're so committed to agriculture, and they are our future leaders. As I've seen firsthand, FFA members demonstrate talent and dedication, and as Commissioner Ball has so rightly said, New York FFA is clearly a model for the nation, shining a spotlight on the many strengths of New York agriculture. These young agricultural leaders if they are of any indication, we can be assured that agriculture is in good hands in the state of New York. I am so pleased that the leadership could join us today. Mr. President, I respectfully request that you extend them all the privileges and courtesies of the Senate.
The question is on the resolution. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The resolution is adopted. To our guests, I welcome you on behalf of the Senate. We extend to you all of the courtesies and privileges of this House. Please rise and be recognized. Senator Janoris.
The request of the sponsors, the two resolutions we took up today, open for co-sponsorship, Mr. President.
The resolutions are open for co-sponsorship. Should you choose not to be a co-sponsor of the resolutions, please notify the desk. Senator Janoris.
I now move to adopt the remainder of the resolution calendar.
All in favor of adopting the resolution calendar, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The resolution calendar is adopted. Senator Janoris.
And can we now begin reading the calendar, but can we start with calendar number 330 and then proceed with the remainder from there?
The Secretary will read.
Calendar number 330, Senate Print 4741B by Senator Harkam, an act to amend the mental hygiene law.
Read the last section.
Section 4, this act will take effect on the 120th day after it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Senator Harkam to explain his vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, we announced the release of the report of our bipartisan task force on opioids, addiction, and overdose prevention. I want to thank all colleagues in the chamber who participated, number of hearings and meetings all over the state. We thank our leader, Andrea Stewart Cousins, for empowering us to get together, and I certainly thank my co-chairs, Senators Carlucci and Senator Rivera. And one of the things that happens in this process is that we met with hundreds of advocates, hundreds of professionals, and we met with hundreds of families and parents who'd been impacted by this crisis. And it's a pain that I can't even imagine as a parent to lose a child, and yet all across the state are people who are turning their grief into positive energy, and making a positive difference in their community and moving the needle forward to help us address this crisis. And we have a couple of people with us today who have been exemplary role models and pathfinders. And so with us today are Angela Robinson and her daughter, Ashley Canestraro, and we also have Stephanie Marquesano from the Harris Project. And Angela and Ashley are here in relation to the first bill. Stephanie is from Lower Westchester, who has really changed the conversation about how we treat substance use disorder and the need for co-occurring disorder treatment at the same time. So if it's appropriate with you, Mr. Chair, before we take up this bill, I would just like colleagues to acknowledge and, if you would, sir, offer them the privileges of the House. Thank you, sir.
To our guests, I welcome you on behalf of the Senate. We extend to you all of the courtesies and privileges of this House. Please all rise and be recognized. Senator Harckham.
So now as we speak on the law, this is a bill that was first brought to the chamber by Senator Ort. Thank you for your work on this. And Senator Kennedy has done a great deal of work on this bill as well. And what it does is it increases the formalized partnership between a treatment center and a family. And this came about because Stephen had signed his parents up and another group, Friends of the Michaels, to receive information about his care and didn't receive that information. And unfortunately, because the family didn't have the information to act, Stephen passed away from an overdose. And so we don't have any more Stephens. We thank you for your persistence in pursuing this law, and colleagues who wouldn't let this go and also kept pushing this bill. This will require substance use providers in consultation with the patient that if they agree to provide the names of people who are their caregivers and their support, when there are signs of relapse or risky behavior, they must inform them so that the families and the caregivers can be involved. So I want to thank you for your persistence and everything that you've done, and I'm proud to vote aye on this. Thank you.
Senator Harckham to be recorded in the affirmative. Senator Kennedy to explain his.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I rise today, I'd like to recognize, first of all, the sponsor of this legislation, Senator Harckham. Thank you so much for your leadership. Also to all of our colleagues that worked so hard to make this happen, and to Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins for bringing this to the floor so expeditiously here. I'd also like to recognize those folks that have already been identified for joining us here today in this session, people that are making a difference each and every day in the lives of those struggling with opioid dependency, because heartbreakingly, they personally understand these stories all too well. Joining us again today is Angela Robertson, who lost her son, Stephen Canestraro, who battled his own fight, and for whom this bill is named after. We also have Ashley Canestraro, the sister of Stephen, and Stephanie Marquesano, the founder of the Harris Project. Thank you all again, and welcome to the Senate chambers on this very auspicious day as we recognize your family and your son and his struggles. The opioid epidemic has already claimed far too many lives. Through this bill we're passing here today in Stephen's memory, we're working to save lives. By passing this legislation, we're giving individuals in treatment the ability to identify people who can be notified in case of an emergency or when red flags arise, like missing critical appointments or drug screenings. This would have made a world of difference in Stephen's recovery story. In the days leading up to his death, he demonstrated warning signs of relapse, but his mother and other advocates were never notified. If this legislation were enacted then, Stephen's story may have ended differently. But instead, his mother and her incredible support team have committed themselves to making sure this doesn't happen to another individual. Individuals who have already been brave enough to take that first step towards sobriety, but who need support structures around them in order to stay on that steady path. Last year, Angela and her team, through her constant work in various recovery ministries, helped thousands of individuals looking for help. We must do our part to ensure that those who need it the most are given that opportunity and they're given the support that they need in the treatment and stay on that path toward recovery. To Angela, Ashley, and all of those that have been affected by this epidemic, this is one small step, but one step that we take today that we know will save lives, and we know it's worth every single second of your work and your advocacy, and we recognize your entire family for everything that you've done to get us to this point. And may Stephen rest in peace, and may the work that you have done in his memory save the lives that we intend to save with this law. Thank you once again for being here, and thank you to all my colleagues for supporting this legislation. Mr. President, I vote aye.
Senator Kennedy to be recorded in the affirmative. Senator Ort to explain his vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank the sponsor, my colleague Senator Harcum, for having the good sense and the leadership to pick up this bill. You know, everyone in this chamber, most people over the last several years understand the opioid epidemic that we have faced here in New York State. And I'm proud to say that this body, on both sides of the political aisle, have supported significant measures that have absolutely undoubtedly saved people's lives in the state of New York and in each of our communities. But one of the things you always recognize when you meet with parents like Angela is that they're always looking for, there's a resolution, right? They want to make sure that their loved one did not die in vain, that they did not die for nothing, that their struggle means something. And even if they did not win their struggle, that perhaps someone else could win their struggle as a result of lessons learned. I can remember when Angela was in my office, in my district office, a couple years ago now, and she told me her story. And it was heart-wrenching to listen to, but it was one of those moments that I think one of the reasons we all run for office, because you could clearly see that there was an issue and there was a easily identifiable solution where we could actually do something to prevent future cases like Stevens. And that's why we all serve, I think, in government, is to actually try to be part of the solution. And at the end of the day, none of this would be possible if Angela hadn't had the courage to sit in my office alongside others, including Avi Israel, who many of you in this chamber know. But she told her story in my office. We put a bill together, and I'm proud to say we're going to pass a version of this bill for the second year in a row here in the Senate. So I want to thank my colleague, Senator Harcum, but I want to thank Angela for your courage and for your commitment to Stephen, but also to your commitment to numerous other young people here in the state of New York who lives could be saved because of your work and your actions. And it's really an honor to carry that torch and to work on behalf of people like Angela and alongside, on behalf of Stephen's memory, to get something done, which we are doing here today. And I would certainly encourage my colleagues in the Assembly to pass this bill, put it on the governor's desk, let's get it signed, and we can save lives, continue to save lives, and try to end the scourge of the opioid epidemic here in New York State. So, Mr. President, thank you for your indulgence. I vote aye.
Senator Ort to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Aye, 61.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 64, Senate Print 1063A by Senator Prasad, an act to amend the mental hygiene law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect on the 120th day after it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Announce the results.
Aye, 61.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 65, Senate Print 2507 by Senator Kaplan, an act to amend the mental hygiene law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Senator Kaplan to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. We all recognize by now that our state is in crisis. Addiction has touched every family, every school, and every community, particularly on Long Island. We've lost far too many innocent young souls to this disease. And we watched our friends and family desperate to get help, having been repeatedly failed by a system that doesn't understand their struggle and doesn't provide them with the support that they need. I'm proud to stand here as a sponsor of this bill that will help break the cycle of addiction. And I'm proud to stand here as a member of this Senate majority as we stand together and pass this sweeping agenda to combat the opioid crisis in New York. And I want every New Yorker whose life has been touched by this crisis to know that we are doing everything we can to help, and we will continue to work tirelessly to fight addiction and help every New Yorker to achieve recovery. Thank you. I vote in the affirmative.
Senator Kaplan, to be recorded in the affirmative, announce the results.
Ayes 61.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 66, Senate Print 4496A by Senator Martinez, an act to amend the mental hygiene law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Fanning, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Senator Martinez to explain her vote.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, and thank you. As we all know, we have heard we are in the middle of an opioid crisis, and many of us, if not all, have been impacted by this crisis. This Recovery Living Task Force is a step in the right direction. What we have seen across the state, we have recovery homes. Well, they've been known as sober homes, and that's one of the reasons why I would like it to be known as recovery homes. Because the issue is these individuals that are in these homes are trying to recover from substance abuse, from chemical dependency. And what we're seeing across the state, that these homes do not have the proper management, they do not have proper protocol, no guidelines in place to help someone recover. And that is the point of these homes, and we are not doing that. We have failed these individuals. We need to do our job. Many will say, why a task force? We have to start somewhere. We have nothing in place for our recovery homes, and what we keep seeing is individuals leaving hospitals, going to the recovery homes, and then instead of going through the actual process of recovery, they're going and they're getting set back because there are drugs in the house, management is not there, there is nothing to help them out, and we are failing them. This task force will charge these members to create a protocol on how these homes will be handled and further help these individuals who are fighting and struggling with chemical dependency. So, Mr. President, thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of my bill, and I encourage my colleagues to please support me on such an important task. Thank you.
Senator Martinez to be recorded in the affirmative. Senator May to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Senator Martinez for putting this bill forward. In my district, there's a family that created a foundation called Road to Recovery because they sent their son to a home in Texas where he was able to really get the treatment that he needed and put him on the road to recovery. And now they fund other people who are suffering from addiction to go to this home in Texas to undergo the treatment that they get there. It saddens me that they're not sending them somewhere in New York. And I think this bill offers us an opportunity to look at models all around the country where things are being done better than they are in New York and potentially create the kinds of programs that we need here. I vote aye.
Senator May to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 61.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 67, Senate Print 4599 by Senator Parker, an act to amend the mental hygiene law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect on the 180th day after it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Fanning, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Senator Parker to explain his vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. To explain my vote, this bill is important, as we've heard, through the day as we've been dealing with this issue of the opioid crisis and trying to address the myriad of issues that are going on in our communities. Our communities in our state is in crisis. I've dealt with this before in the context of even my own personal family, and so the issue around treatment is really, really critical. You heard Senator Martinez talk about that in the context of her bill and what needs to happen. The bill that I'm putting forward today, and I'm thanking everyone here for their vote for, is about a Bill of Rights for people who are in treatment. And these Bill of Rights, once this becomes law, will be posted around every facility that provides treatment, as well as handed to people who come in to receive treatment. The Bill of Rights should include, but not limited, that every patient has the right to participate in developing an individualized plan of treatment, to receive an explanation of services in accordance with their treatment plan, to fully be informed of the proposed treatment plan. They have the right to object or to terminate treatment unless otherwise directed by a court order. They have a right to privacy in treatment and care for personal needs. They have a right to access to treatment records and to receive courteous, fair, respectful treatment that is appropriate to the individual's needs. And these are just some of the rights that they have. It's going to be important that we uphold those and that we help people along as we fight our way out of this crisis. Thank you, Mr. President. I vote aye.
Senator Parker, to be recorded in the affirmative, announce the results.
Aye 61.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 68, Senate Print 5457 by Senator Harkam, an act to amend the public health law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Fenning, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Announce the results.
Aye 61.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 69, Senate Print 6650 by Senator Harkam, an act to amend the mental hygiene law.
Lay it aside.
Calendar number 71, Senate Print 3159A by Senator Harkam, an act to amend the insurance law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Fenning, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Announce the results.
Aye 61.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 133, Senate Print 7132 by Senator Stavisky, an act to amend the education law.
Read the last section.
Section 8, this act shall take effect on the 180th day after it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Fenning, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Announce the results.
Aye 61.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 171, Senate Print 5653 by 5653A by Senator Metzger, an act to amend the public health law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Fenning, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Senator Metzger to explain her vote.
First, I rise to thank my colleagues, Senators Harkam, Rivera, and Carlucci, for their really superb leadership on the Joint Senate Task Force on Opioids Addiction and Overdose Prevention. They did truly outstanding work over these many months. The task force has gathered extremely valuable information and testimony from around the state and developed a truly meaningful package of legislation today to address substance use disorder and stem the opioid crisis plaguing our communities. The communities in my district have been deeply affected by the crisis. I represent Ulster, Sullivan, Orange, and Delaware counties, communities within them. They all face staggering opioid-related deaths that far exceed the state average. Ulster, Sullivan, and Orange counties, the opioid-related death rate is almost twice the state average. The devastation this public health crisis has caused is almost beyond words. Parents losing their teenage son or daughter, children losing their parents and placed into foster care, people losing their jobs, families becoming homeless. I don't think I've yet to meet someone who has not had a friend, a colleague, or a relative touched by the impacts of substance use disorder in some way. There is no doubt that the package of opioid legislation passed today will help save lives. The bill I sponsored is intended to prevent the illegal overprescribing of opioids. Less than a year and a half ago, in October 2018, a Staten Island doctor was arrested for doling out opioids to patients with visible signs of addiction without appointments at all hours of the night, making them pay hundreds of dollars in cash for each prescription. On that same day, he was charged. 4 other New York doctors were charged with the same crime. Collectively, they had prescribed 8.5 million opioid pills to patients whose health and well-being they'd sworn to protect. I have the greatest respect for the medical profession and believe that these bad apples are exceptions to the rule, but we cannot afford any exceptions. They can cause outsized harm and can cost lives. This bill affirmatively directs the Department of Health to periodically analyze data in the Prescription Monitoring Program Registry to see if any violations have occurred in this prescribing of controlled substances and to take action on those violations. This is an important step that will help prevent abuse in our state. I'm proud to participate in this package. I want to thank you all for your leadership again. This is an important day, and I vote aye. Thank you very much.
Senator Metzger to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 61.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 172, Senate Print 6397 by Senator Carlucci, an act to amend the public health law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act shall take effect on the 120th day after it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Fanning, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Announce the results.
Ayes 61.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 173, Senate Print 7102A by Senator Benjamin, an act to amend the public health law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act shall take effect on the 120th day after it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Fanning, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas. In relation to calendar number 173, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Funke, Griffo, Helming, Jordan, Little, Ritchie, and Sereno. Also, Senator Jacobs. Ayes 53, nays 8.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 174, Senate Print 7115 by Senator Rivera, an act to amend the public health law and the education law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act shall take effect on the 1st of January.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Fanning, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Announce the results.
Ayes 61.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 183, Senate Print 6288A by Senator Sepulveda, an act to amend the mental hygiene law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Fanning, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Senator Sepulveda to explain his vote.
We've heard many discussions today about the failure of the opioid crisis and what we're dealing with. But what this bill does is deal with what happens when we fail with this crisis, what happens to the individual, and generally speaking, they wind up incarcerated. So, we know that about 60% of individuals that are incarcerated are dealing with some level of abuse, substance abuse. And what this bill does is going to require the state to provide an annual report on substance abuse disorder treatment programs in our facilities. This data will include what substance abuse incarcerated individuals are commonly using. And the importance of that is that it'll help us with treatment. It'll help us understand how many individuals are receiving treatment and how we can provide them with the services while incarcerated so that when they come out, they don't return to drug use, to opioid use, hopefully can cure their addiction and become productive members of our society and won't return to prisons where it costs us over $300,000 per inmate to support them there. I think we could do better use of our tax dollars by providing treatment and getting people out there to get jobs, to stay in their jobs and become tax-paying citizens. So this is crucial for to raise awareness of our crisis, and let's raise it not only outside of prisons, but certainly inside of prisons where the need is greater. Thank you.
Senator Sepulveda to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the result. Senator Little to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to explain my vote because I do believe that in our prisons we need more drug programs, and that's something that they are trying to do. Currently, drug programs are given to inmates as they approach the time within 3 years, I believe it is, of their first opportunity for parole. But the fact that we are getting drugs in our prisons is a problem, and it's a problem that Corrections and Department of Corrections is working on all the time. We have 7-day visitation in the maximum security prisons. We have all kinds of ways of trying to see that drugs are not coming into the prisons, and yet they're still getting in. And the vendor program, which is one that would say that in order to send a package to someone, you want to send food and stuff to your inmate. And I have people who call my office who have sons and daughters who are in prison, so I empathize with them tremendously. But their fear, too, is that, you know, they need to be protected from drugs while they are in prison. This vendor program, you would have to go and you'd order what you wanted, buy it, and the store itself would send it. But that has been rejected, as have many of the things to try to screen for drugs coming into the prison. So be glad to find a better way to do it. I know corrections would like to find a better way to keep drugs out of the prisons, and I think we all would, and have more drug rehabilitation programs in prison. But this bill basically just requires a lot more reporting, and they already do a lot of reporting, but it's just a mandate on them without any help to achieve the good results that we're all looking for. Thank you. I vote no.
Senator Little to be recorded in the negative. Announce the results.
In relation to calendar number 183, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Borrello, Funke, Helming, Jacobs, Jordan, Little, O'Mara, Ort, Ritchie, Robach, also Senator Akshar. Ayes 50, nays 11.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 184, Senate Print 6694 by Senator Carlucci, an act to amend the mental hygiene law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect on the 90th day after it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Senator Carlucci to explain his vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Senator Harcum and Senator Rivera, and especially our leader, Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins, for pushing forward this legislative package today. And unfortunately, in the United States, over 130 Americans pass away each day from an overdose. In fact, in New York State, every 2 hours, another New Yorker passes away from an overdose, meaning the time that we've spent together in this chamber today, another New Yorker has passed away. That means that the sirens need to be running, the alarm bells need to be going off, and we have to be doing everything we possibly can to end this horrible epidemic that we're facing. The legislation that we have before us right now is an effort to make the parity real. We've seen the efforts from the federal level to the state level to issue parity between health and mental health services. The fact is, we have to treat addiction for what it is. Addiction is a disease. Just like we fight against heart disease or diabetes, we have to address addiction the same way. But the reality is that people living with substance use disorder, the rates have not kept up. In fact, most of the Medicaid rates for substance use disorder have not changed in the past 10 years. This legislation before us will require a work group to make sure that we're meeting that parity, that we're lifting up the reimbursement rates. Because when we've been traveling around the state, the providers we talk to can barely keep the doors open. That means that we're not only trying to keep those doors open, but what incentive is there to provide more providers, to provide more treatment? We have to make sure we don't just talk about parity, but we treat mental health and substance use disorder the same way we treat healthcare. And in doing this, in getting people the treatment and the care that they need, we can help people recover, live independent, productive lives, and overall reduce the cost of healthcare. So I want to thank my colleagues for supporting this important legislation. Let's make sure we keep the momentum going and make sure that other states and the nation are looking to New York as leaders in finding the way forward to ending the horrible overdose epidemic that we've seen. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Carlucci to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 61.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 321, Senate Print 5480 by Senator Rivera, an act to amend the public health law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Senator May to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the members of the task force for the important work they did and for coming to my district. I have the honor of representing the exact geographical center of New York State, but my region has the dubious distinction of having almost double the rate of overdose deaths that we see statewide, and being among the very top counties for neonatal or newborns born with neonatal abstinence syndrome. It meant a lot that the task force came to my district, that they held a roundtable specifically about rural issues with opioids, and that they have responded now to some of the specific concerns that they heard from the first responders and the social service providers and the parents and the addicts themselves that they talked to in my district. So this pilot program for infant recovery centers across the state will help us keep children alive and healthy. And what could be more important than that? So I want to congratulate Senator Rivera on this bill, and I proudly vote aye.
Senator May, to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 61.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 331, Senate Print 5150B by Senator Harkam, an act to amend the public health law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect on the 180th day after it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 331, voted in the negative, Senator Jordan. Ayes 60, nays 1. In relation to calendar 331, voted in the negative, Senators Gallivan, Jordan, and Little. Ayes 58, also Senator Ort. Also Senators Ort and Senator Helming. Ayes 55, nays 6.
The bill is passed. Senator Janoris, that completes the reading of today's calendar.
Can we now go to the reading of the controversial calendar, please?
The Secretary will ring the bell. The Secretary will read.
Calendar number 69, Senate Print 6650 by Senator Harkam, an act to amend the mental hygiene law.
Senator Akshar.
Mr. President, thank you. Would the sponsor be so kind to yield to a few questions?
Will the sponsor yield?
Absolutely.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can the sponsor tell me what the genesis of the bill was?
Absolutely. Through you, Mr. President, we have found a lot of gaps in the system as we toured the state and we listened to folks. And the two spots where we lose folks the most and we have the highest rate of fatality for overdose is after people leave a hospital and after people leave a correctional facility, especially after a correctional facility, because if they've been there a while and their underlying substance use disorder or co-occurring mental disorder is not diagnosed and treated, they may be abstinent, but the craving for drugs are still there. They go out and use the same amount, but they've lost their tolerance. And that's why we have such a high rate of fatalities. And also immediately after an overdose hospitalization, when people have come back, and they leave a hospital without going into treatment, they are also at especially high risk of overdose. So those are the two gaps that we're trying to fill with this law.
Thank you. Mr. President, through you, if the sponsor continue to yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Absolutely.
The sponsor yields.
Mr. President, the sponsor talks about specifically, I want to focus my attention on Section 2 of the particular piece of legislation as it pertains to correctional facilities. That's where my line of questioning will be. In all of the statute, though, it references opioid use disorder. I'm wondering if the sponsor could tell me who within the confines of a correctional facility will make that diagnosis of an inmate.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. There is an intake that is now done through Department of Corrections where they do a screening of behavioral and physical and psychosocial matters, and that's where many people are diagnosed. And if not, there are other people who come forward while they're incarcerated, and it needs to be a formal diagnosis by a physician, by a CASAC, somebody who is professionally certified to diagnose someone with opioid use disorder.
Mr. President, through you, if the sponsor continue to yield.
Does the sponsor
Continue.
yield? Sponsor yields.
Thank you, Mr. President. Within the confines of a correctional facility, who is expected to administer this program?
Absolutely. It would, through you, Mr. President, it would be through the medical professionals at the facility upon discharge.
If the sponsor continue to
Does the
yield.
sponsor yield? Sponsor yields.
This statute that we're discussing, does this all pertain to both county correctional facilities as well as state correctional facilities?
Mr. President, no, it does not. It's only state facilities. We're concerned about another unfunded mandate coming from this body. So it is for state facilities only, and we estimate it to be a cost of about $4.3 million.
Mr. President, through you, if the sponsor continue to
Does
yield.
the sponsor yield?
Absolutely.
Sponsor yields.
So let me just ask you quickly, if I may, about that particular sum or cost. How do we arrive at that $4.3 million, and what are we doing to address that particular issue? I'm encouraged, actually, when I hear you say we're not talking about it at the county level because we were genuinely concerned about the cost that the counties would have to incur. So how are we addressing the $4.3 million that we expect this program to cost?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is something that we will have to put in our one-house budget. We will fight for as we need to, and this is really a first step of a greater expansion of treatment in the correctional facilities. And when we get to the county facilities, we need to invest a larger share. We started that process last year. We need to continue it this year. But this $4.3 million needs to be put in by this body as a prerogative that we're catching people at a vulnerable time, and we're hoping to fill that gap.
President, through you, if the sponsor continue to yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Absolutely.
Sponsor yields.
Mr. President, through you, does the inmate need to be in a approved substance use disorder jail-based program in order to receive the Narcan and the education upon their departure?
This is upon discharge. They don't necessarily need to be in a program. In fact, there are some state facilities who do not have formal programs addressing opioid use disorder, which is unfortunate. Most of them are centered in a cluster of prisons where that's a specialty. So it's really upon determination of the physician upon discharge.
Mr. President, through you, if the sponsor continue to yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Absolutely.
Sponsor yields.
Just so I understand then, if I were to go through the intake process and then be diagnosed with a substance use disorder upon my arrival or my intake, I spend some time in the correctional facility, however long that may be. Upon my release, whether I've gone through a substance use disorder program or not, I'm going to be given this education as well as two doses of Narcan.
Yes.
Okay.
Whether you need it or not.
Through you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, through you, if the sponsor continue to yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Absolutely, Mr.
Sponsor
President.
yields.
Did we seek the input of the Department of Corrections prior to the statute, making its way to the floor of the Senate and during your deliberations?
Sure. We received testimony and we had lengthy conversations with Department of Corrections. I do not know if they viewed this draft of the bill, to be quite honest.
Mr. President, through you, if the sponsor continue to yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Absolutely.
Sponsor yields.
Did you have conversations with the Corrections Officer Union or anybody else about the implementation of this particular piece of legislation?
Mr. President, no, we did not, because the correction officers themselves will not be involved in this. This will be done through a physician. And again, this is part of addressing a very vulnerable population as they leave the correctional facility. So this is not an ongoing mandate or responsibility to the security guards, to the union. This is done by the medical staff upon discharge.
Mr. President, through you, if the sponsor continue to yield.
The sponsor yields.
Absolutely.
Sponsor yields.
All right, so just so we're on the same sheet of music, the corrections officers will not be required to administer this program.
Chair, no.
All right, on the bill, Mr. President.
Senator Akshar on the bill.
Let me thank the sponsor for the bill. I thank him for, I have the good pleasure of serving as the ranking member on the Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Committee, so appreciate the work that we're doing. I appreciate the work that this body is doing and continues to do in this area. I would argue respectfully, of course, that it's probably one of the only areas in which we really work in a bipartisan fashion. And, you know, we're doing really great work. You know, at the end of the day, this is an incredibly robust calendar, a robust agenda. And I think most of what we saw today by way of legislation was good, and it's going to help New Yorkers. But to the chairman of the committee and to this body as a whole, I implore us as we move forward with the budget process that we properly allocate funds to deal with this issue. I think that we fell flat last year. To keep the number at $240 million, I think we did a disservice to the community-based providers that are fighting on the front lines every single day. And I go back to what I said yesterday, and people are probably tired of hearing me say it, but in an environment in which we can spend $300 million to reface the Erie Canal, we must be able to find additional monies to spend to increase funding in this particular area, because all of the legislation that we passed and all of the good things we are doing by way of statute, Mr. President, we can't implement that on the ground unless the people who are fighting on the front lines have the resources they need. So, Mr. President, again, I appreciate the sponsor's willingness to answer my questions. When it comes time, I'll be voting in the affirmative.
Senator Lanza.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, would the sponsor yield for just a couple of questions?
Does the sponsor yield?
Absolutely.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you. First, I want to commend my colleague for his work with regard to this very important issue that is ravaging our state. And I think I want to say you're doing a great job, and I appreciate it. I do have a slight concern with this legislation, and so my question is this. Is the Narcan provided directly to the person suffering through the addiction?
Through you, Mr. President, I'm not sure I got your question. How is it administered?
No, so...
when someone leaves.
Through you, Mr. President. When the person is leaving, is the Narcan provided directly to that person?
Through you, Mr. President, what happens is the healthcare provider will explain how Narcan is used, when it should be used, how it is administered, and then after that education process, they will be handed a Narcan kit. It comes in a pouch, similar to the ones that when many of us do trainings in our district, it comes in a pouch. There are gloves, there's a mask, and there are 2 doses of Narcan in squirt vials.
President, would the sponsor yield for a question?
Does the sponsor yield?
Absolutely.
The sponsor yields.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President. Over the last 8 years, I've sponsored dozens upon dozens of Narcan training programs where we've handed out thousands of Narcan kits to people across the community of Staten Island that I represent. Typically, the people that come to these programs are not the people that are suffering through the addiction, but their family and friends and just concerned residents. The thought being that the more these kits are out there, the more likely it is that someone might be at the scene of where a person is suffering through an overdose. My question to you is, I don't think we could expect a person who is suffering an overdose to be able to self-administer Narcan. So wouldn't it be more efficient or effective if these kits were handed to that departing person's family or friends?
Through you, Mr. President, not everybody has family and friends, and certainly they are not in the facility when someone is being discharged. The thought is that in harm reduction strategies, the point is, if people are going to use, we want to keep them alive until they're ready for treatment. That's the point of harm reduction. So the point is to encourage people, if they're going to use with somebody else. I'll watch you, you watch me. That's why there are 2 doses. So the thought is that whoever this person either is using with or living with. So for instance, they may go to a shelter, as often happens when people come out of prison, and they don't have family there. But maybe they have a buddy there who can watch them, who can be their supervisor while they need to do what they need to do. If someone goes to a location that has a family, even great, even better. Like you, I have a lot of families who come to our Narcan trainings as well. But at least we're getting them started on the process initially, in the hopes that, obviously our hope is that they can get linked to treatment immediately, but we know that relapse is part of this disease, and so especially when they're that vulnerable, we want them to have this on them.
Mr. President, on the bill.
Senator Lanza on the bill.
Again, I want to thank the sponsor. I'm going to support this legislation for the simple reason that I believe the more of these kits that are out there in the community, the better it is for all of us. And you know, this issue is so widespread and devastating that every little bit helps. I just think it might be better in this case to make sure that if someone is leaving and they do have friends and they do have family, that we somehow get the kits into their hands, because clearly we all understand if you're overdosing, you're not going to be in a position to be able to save yourself. You need somebody to be there with this kit. Again, more kits in the community, the better it is for all of us, so I support the legislation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Harcum on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank both my colleagues for their good and probing questions, and I agree with them. We should put our money where our mouth is, not just in terms of this legislation, but in terms of the whole safety net in terms of mental health treatment and substance use disorder treatment. We heard out in the field very clearly from the professionals that we are $100 million short of where we need to be to address this crisis. And a subway platform, a homeless shelter, a correctional facility should not be the first location that somebody gets treatment for substance use disorder or mental health. If that's the case, we have failed them. We as a society have failed them, and we as a government body have failed them. So are we going to come up with $100 million tomorrow? No, but last year we did add 7.5. I think we need to do much more than that this year in challenging times. But if we are all committed to this, as it sounds like everybody is, you know, we're going to have some tough decisions to make about how we raise this revenue, because a lot of the things that we talk about as flash button issues, at the heart of it is the lack of treatment for mental health disorders, substance use disorders, and the two combined. So I thank colleagues. I agree this has been a good area for us to work in a bipartisan fashion, and I support the bill. Thank you.
Are there any other senators wishing to be heard? Seeing and hearing none, debate is closed. Senator Janaris.
Mr. President, by consent, can we return this to the non-controversial calendar and take up the vote, please?
Without objection, so ordered. Read the last section.
Section 4, this act shall take effect on the 180th day after it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Janaris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar number 69, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Flanagan, Gallivan, Griffo, O'Mara, Ort, Ritchie, and Robach. Ayes 54, nays 7.
The bill is passed. Senator Janoris, that completes the reading of the controversial calendar.
Mr. President, if we could return to motions for a second on behalf of Senator Kaminsky. On page 11, I offer the following amendments to Calendar 161, Senate 5786A, and ask that said bill retain its place on third reading calendar.
The amendment is received, and the bill shall retain its place on the third reading calendar.
And there will be, at the conclusion of session, a meeting of the Labor Committee in room 124. And with that, is there any further business at the desk?
There will be an immediate meeting of the Labor Committee in room 124 of the Capitol. There is no further business at the desk.
I move to adjourn until tomorrow, Wednesday, February 5th at 11 a.m.
On motion, the Senate stands adjourned until Wednesday, February 5th at 11 a.m.